Our guest on the Spriester Session is Brandon Herrera, a candidate on the Republican side for Congress and a man who has taken a two-time incumbent Republican to a runoff. Brandon, I'm glad we made the time to get you in here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Did you expect to be here? When you started this whole thing, did you expect that you would take Tony Gonzales to a runoff?
It's an interesting question because I wouldn't have gotten involved in the race had I thought that this was impossible. Like, I never would have thrown my hat in the ring if I thought it was just a pipe dream to waste time and money. I always knew that there was a path to victory on this, but it was still kind of wild watching the results come in on March 5th and realizing, oh man, we were right. You know, just kind of, it was an interesting moment, and it lets me know that I'm not alone in a lot of the frustrations that I had that led me here.
Is that what got you into this race? Talk about some of those frustrations that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So I never had any interest in running for office of any kind. You can clearly see I've lived my life in a way that I never thought I would ever be running for any sort of public office. But unfortunately, I just, as a constituent of Tony's, as a resident of District 23 here in San Antonio, I just got really frustrated with the votes that my congressman was making. And I thought that, you know, if you have a Texas Republican, that meant something, that he was going to be an actual conservative fighter. And especially with me being disappointed with some of the votes that he's made there, made me really start paying attention to some of the votes he was making in other places. And I realized that this is just not somebody who represents my values. And I was worried that he was going to get away with continuing to do that.
So you're here now. Whether you expected to be or not, you're here.
Yes, sir.
Your prospects for Election Day, your feel for the campaign right now.
Well, it's kind of funny because it's a bit of a canary in the coal mine to see how much money and effort that his campaign is spending to try to defame me. And I mean, we're being outspent. My prediction is by the end of it, we're going to end up being outspent 10-1. If you include his campaign and all the other third parties, the super PACs, everybody that's spending money against me right now, we'll probably be at a 10-1 ratio. And if he didn't see me as a serious contender, he wouldn't be begging people in DC to spend money against me. He wouldn't be begging for the support of Mike Johnson, for example, to come help him with a primary fight. I mean, these things are very rare for somebody who, I mean, it's very rare in general, but it's super rare for somebody who is not a threat.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think he just has to look at the general election and realize you're a threat.
Or the primary election?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really serious thing, to be a wealthed incumbent in the state of Texas and still have 55% of your district vote against you. That's a serious problem.
Do you expect to get all those votes on Election Day?
I expect to get the vast majority of them because every candidate that was running against Tony in the primary election kind of was running on the same message. We were running on a more conservative platform. You know, I've talked to all of the other candidates, and we've all communicated even since the primary, and we all kind of knew that we were all running to be not Tony. You know, we all recognized the same things that he screwed up, and we wanted to fix that. And I think that we've got a really good chance at consolidating that vote because in reality it was a protest vote.
Even overcoming the 10-1 vote, the 10-1 being outspent money-wise, you think you can overcome that? How?
Absolutely. Well, because I think this points to a bigger issue, which I think is why a lot of people are jumping into this race at the moment, that the money is no longer mattering as much as the establishment would like. Because if they ever had a problem before, if anybody was a problem candidate, hello, they could just throw money at it, and they can throw their connections, get their PACs behind it, and snuff that problem out. But today, in the age of information, the age of social media, people are getting disenfranchised with the establishment, and they're realizing that, you know, hey, just because we can throw money at a person doesn't mean they're going to win.
Do you think you were underappreciated, maybe overlooked in this primary?
I don't think so. I don't feel underappreciated by any means. I mean, we were able to pull it off with a quarter of the vote, which in a five-way primary is incredible. Very appreciative of the support we had then. But I think, you know, there was a lot of things that a lot of the other candidates brought to the table that, you know, I can also appreciate. I mean, whether it's Border Patrol service, you know, community involvement. There were a lot of people that, you know, felt that they might have been a better choice. But at the very least, the way that I look at it is that as long as you voted against Tony, you voted for me.
If people paint you in the single issue category, that you're just running on guns, true or false?
Definitely false. It's something that it's been thrown at me a lot that I'm a single issue kind of candidate, which I will admit, that's what got me involved in the race. It's my background, it's my industry. I'm very involved in the firearms industry, of course, but it means they haven't listened to me talk. Because for District 23 being the biggest border district in the entire country with Mexico, we have a lot of unique issues that we're facing here, and that's a lot of what we focused on. And we need a real good conservative fighter to be representing this district in DC. When it comes to that, when it comes to single issue spending bills, there's a lot of the less talked about issues that I think Tony's been very weak on, and I think that's what we need to replace him for.
His vote, though, on with John Cornyn on some gun control legislation, that was the impetus that got you in this race, though, wasn't it?
It wasn't what got me in the race necessarily, but it got me paying attention to his voting record for sure. I really didn't. I didn't get into this race until August of last year, but I didn't make that decision really until much earlier in the year. But that's what got me paying attention. That's what made me realize that, hey, this Tony guy may not be the guy that he claims to be on his mailers, or the guy he claims to be in his TV ads. He might be a little different, because he plays a good conservative on Fox News, but unfortunately that's just not the case.
What is it about that particular vote that bothered you?
So there's a lot of things. So it was what was called the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which is a misnomer in a lot of ways. For one, it was not going to make communities safer, but in the other way, it wasn't bipartisan. It was not a joint Republican and Democrat effort. It was a Democrat effort that had a handful of turncoat Republicans that voted for it. And Tony was one of them, unfortunately. Cornyn was another. And it funded a lot of things that I believe are blatantly unconstitutional, like red flag laws and things like that, where it's not just a violation of the Second Amendment, but it's a violation of due process in general, is you don't actually get convicted of a crime before you have the implications of that handed down to you. I think that's a major problem with the Bill of Rights.
Any gun legislation that you would support?
I would support repealing a lot of the laws that we have on the books. Specifically, one thing that I would love to get pushed across is I would love to see constitutional carry, which has been making a great movement throughout the states. I mean, constitutional carry was a pipe dream in the 90s. And then now more states than not have constitutional carry in some degree or the other, Texas being one of them recently. And so I'd love to see something like that pushed, because that's legislation that will actually make us safer.
Yeah. Well, Uvalde is part of the district, part of District 23.
Yes, sir.
What happened with Tony's vote came right after what happened at Robb Elementary. How do you balance that out? The fact that we do have people that are using guns to do unspeakable things, to take children's lives, with your strong-held constitutional beliefs in the Second Amendment. How does that balance out?
So I don't think that things are mutually exclusive. I think that there are things that we can and should be doing to protect children. Things like armed school resource officers, better security, different things like that. I think there are ways you can make children safer, because we're all, the left likes to paint a lot of things that we don't care about children. Of course we care. Yeah. Everybody cares about children. Yeah. But I think that there's ways that you can help secure that future without having to break or mold the Constitution to the way that you want to paint certain things. I think we can do that, and in general, and this is kind of a more unpopular side of that argument, but it's one that I take. If you look at the statistics of it, one of the biggest outliers when it comes to the kind of people who commit these actions, they're not things that red flag laws or any of these background checks would actually solve. Most of these people, in fact, the vast majority of these mass shooters, never had a crime. They didn't have a felony on record. They could have passed every single background check you throw at them. They would have passed all of it. Enhanced checks won't solve it. The only thing that does solve it is the involvement of the family. Because the number one outlier, if you want to talk about SSRIs, that's its own kind of issue, but the number one thing is broken homes. Yeah. And that's a huge problem in this country, and I think this is one of the many ways that problem is showing itself. Yeah,
that's what I was going to say. I mean, when you look at something like Uvalde, and you see this clearly was an individual who came from a troubled family. Yeah. But what do you say to, and have you met with any of the families from Uvalde to talk to them about what happened down there?
Yeah, and I've met with several parents of children that were unfortunately lost in school shootings, including Parkland. And then one of the things that I've heard, because it's a situation where emotions run high, no matter what, no matter how you approach it. It's an awful thing. But while you have some that are pushing for firearm reform and things on one side, on the other side, you have the complete opposite, where you have people that are saying, hey, stop standing on my children to push your agenda. It's not appropriate.
Yeah. How do you heal a community like Uvalde, that would be in your district if you win, is in the district that you're campaigning for? Because there seems to be a divide there on how to move forward.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's something that I think time is going to be the best part of it. And time is going to be a necessity, because you have a community like Uvalde, which is, pretty small in comparison to the rest of the district. It's a pretty small community, and that was a huge blow. That's the reason why most people in the country know the name Uvalde.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate, and that's going to stick with them for a long time. But I think the best thing we can do is make right by that and be sure that we can use that as an opportunity to move forward with safer schools.
Let's move forward now and talk about some of the attacks that have been lobbied against you. You said you expect to be outspent 10-1.
Yep.
The thing that seems to be most prominent in these attacks is a joke that you made on your YouTube about veteran suicide.
Yeah.
Do you regret saying that?
I regret having that clip available for people to take out of context, because I knew it was going to happen. Like when I very first started this campaign, I joked. I said, I can't wait to find out all the things that I didn't know I've done. And that was one of them, because I'd never made the joke, is the thing. That was one of the jokes that I was saying that a friend, and to be clear, I don't think veteran suicide is a joke. I think it's a very important issue with the country. I think it's a very important issue in a lot of the communities that I'm involved in. The veteran community is very important to me. And everybody else at that table who's a co-host of that podcast of mine are all military veterans. And so earlier that morning, before I was on that podcast, we had all donated our time at SHOT Show, it was a big firearm industry conference, to the Independence Fund was running a Targeting a Solution panel, which is a veteran suicide prevention panel. I was happy to donate my time to that. And one of my Purple Heart veteran buddies said, hey, you need to make this joke. I think it's going to be hilarious. And I was reciting the joke that I was being encouraged to make, but never did. The panel is available on YouTube to watch. It's Targeting Solution. I never made the joke. I made a variation that was way more tame. And unfortunately, the only thing that Tony can attack me on is out of context clips, because he can't attack me on policy. If he ever attacked me on policy, he would lose in the eyes of his voters. So what he'll do is he'll send teams out on the internet, find 3, 4, 5 second clips where if you have no context for it, I sound like a terrible human. But it's not stuff I actually said, and it's not stuff I believe in. For example, a couple years ago, just to show how important the veteran community is and things that we've done, that same group of friends, we came together and raised $250,000 in 2 days for Gold Star families. It's something that I've been very active in. So to be attacked there is particularly hurtful.
Well, that's bothersome, I can tell to you, that you're being attacked about your support for veterans.
Yeah, it's very strange, because he's attacked me in places where I'm strongest. But that's why it's kind of irritating to see that levied the most. And I think that's why he's having the least amount of success with it, because anybody who's followed me for a number of years, if you don't know me, it sounds awful. But if you've followed me for years and you know what I'm about, people see right through it.
Do you think that are you encouraging people to take a look at your YouTube videos, to take a look at what you put on Facebook, to kind of get the idea that I've watched some of them. You do movie reviews. You've done, funny memes, things like that. It's not always politically correct, but I think that's kind of...
It rarely is.
That's kind of what your deal is.
Yeah, absolutely, because I'm not politically correct. I run it's basically an internet comedy career. In the firearm space, or it's in the podcast space, I do a lot of things that are considered, out of pocket to a lot of people, but at the end of the day, you have to understand the difference between humor and what actually is important. And so that's why a lot of people thought when I initially announced I was running, they thought it was going to be a joke, or that I wasn't going to take this very seriously, or it was going to be like almost a parody run. But I said from day one I was going to take this extremely seriously. And I think the important part is knowing time and place. Like there's ways that I will act on the internet, on a podcast, when I'm amongst friends and making jokes, you act a certain way. If I'm at a political rally or if I'm talking to you, I behave completely differently. And I think it's important to know the distinction between those two things.
Yeah, and you know that distinction.
I would like to think that I do.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. Do you think you'll win on Election Day? And have you even thought forward to what a Brandon Herrera in Congress looks like?
Yeah, thankfully, let me answer the first part first. I have a lot of faith in our grassroots. I have a lot of faith in the people that we've connected with in all 29 counties in the district, people that are pushing that no, we can't do 2 more years of Tony, and that this is our opportunity with this runoff to actually make a change and to send that message to DC that you can't give us garbage candidates anymore. I have a lot of faith in those people, and that's why I think that we're going to take it. I really do. And I think that we're going to prove in a David and Goliath kind of way that we can stand up to the establishment no matter how much money they try to pour on us, we can still win. And I think that even outside of District 23, that's an important message to send.
Have you allowed yourself to think about what a Brandon Herrera in Congress would look like?
We try to go one fight at a time, but thankfully I do have a lot of friends now in Congress, people that I identify with as actual fighters and people that I appreciate their voting record and I like the things that they've done, and I'm hoping to align with them and give them more backup. People that have fought not just the Democrats, but also fought some of the bad Republicans I think that we've got representing us. People that are just establishment guys who are more infatuated with the idea of being a congressman than actually serving their constituents.
Give me an example of one of those people.
In which way?
In Congress that you could align yourself with or that you have respect for?
I like a lot of the Freedom Caucus guys. I like, for example, the Chip Roys, the Matt Gaetz, the Thomas Masseys. There's a lot of people there that aren't afraid to stand up to even Republicans when Republicans are doing the wrong thing. Because I don't see this as partisan. I see this as people who respect the Constitution, who respect what America stands for, and the people who don't. And most of those are Democrats, in my opinion. But a lot of them are still Republicans, and we've got to fight those too.
Final question for you.
Yes, sir.
Unless you've got something you want to add.
Go for it.
You're talking to somebody, final days of the campaign, which is what we're in right now. They're torn between Tony Gonzales and Brandon Herrera.
Yeah.
What do you say to them?
I say that there's a lot of people that are on the fence because and a lot of people that maybe aren't political in general because they're disenfranchised with the two-party system, and they have reason to be. The two-party system has its flaws, and it's really driven a lot of people away from being involved in voting in the first place. But that's why primaries are so important, because you just don't have to deal with whoever the garbage candidate is that DC spoon feeds you. You still have a choice. They're going to push that person super hard. They're going to send you 100 mailers. They're going to be all over TV. But at the end of the day, you still have the ability to choose that. You don't have to go along with what the establishment wants for you. You can make that choice. And so that's the choice that we can make now, especially in this runoff on May 28th.
Good luck.
I appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.